So I'm going to do a Tactica here for the Battle Sister Squad, the only troop choice for the Sisters of Battle. And these are sort of built to be a Space Marine, Imperial Guard combo in a way. Battle Sisters have a lot of similarities to the Space Marines. They're wearing power armor, they have the same ballistic skill, but then there's some similarities to Imperial Guard or anyone else who's sort of toughness 3. And initiative 3. So it's a sort of similar to both, takes goods and bads from both sides unit. It's the only troop choice you have, so you don't have a lot of choice as to troops. You're gonna take Battle Sisters. There are no HQs that let you take some other squad as a troop choice. Maybe one day down the road, sometime in the distant future, if there's ever a codex, we'll see some different troop choices. So this squad has a minimum of 10 girls. I know I don't have 10 here, but you don't need to see a bunch of girls out on front of the table. So it has a minimum of 10. You can take 10 additional ones for 12 points each. That would be a pretty big squad, 20 girls. They're not fearless or anything. They are basic troops. They got power armor, so 3-up armor save. They have bolt guns, bolt pistols, frag and crack grenades. They have an active faith, which lets them reroll 1s on their shooting. It lets them reroll 1s on their attacks, and in the movement phase, lets them automatically regroup. Now, by the way that the rules are written, how does this active faith work? And this is where these girls are actually better than Space Marines. And certainly better than Imperial Guard. In the movement phase, if you're running, according to the make a morale check, regroup roll, you would roll that at the beginning of the movement phase before the girls move. And if you failed that, then it says your active faith is taken immediately before you move. So you would roll your leadership for a bunch of girls who are fleeing. So let's say these girls are fleeing off the board here. On my movement phase, I roll. Let's say I get a 10, and they're going to continue running. Then I would spend my active faith at that point, right before I actually move them. And if I get my active faith, then they immediately regroup. But they're not as good as They Shall Know No Fear at this point. So they just regroup as if anyone else who was to regroup. What other things to know about them? The active faith in the shooting phase says that they reroll 1s. Now they hit on a 3-up, so it's like twin-linked light. If you're twin-linked, you reroll all misses. In this case, they reroll 50% of their misses. It's pretty useful. It lets even individuals shooting heavy weapons have a much better chance of hitting something. And it works while shooting at flyers, so you get to reroll your 1s in case you actually are going to hit a flyer from snap shooting. So it's pretty good. It only works in your shooting phase because you're not going to be able to shoot during your opponent's. Then other rule, the other active faith lets you reroll for 1s in the assault phase, and it says you roll it at the beginning of the assault phase. It's in both your assault phase and your opponent's. So this active faith got really good in 6th edition. Because these girls, let's say they're standing here, they're about to be assaulted. At the start of the assault phase, when they're about to be assaulted, you spend that faith point, you roll for your active faith. You then reroll 1s on your overwatch, and you reroll 1s in the assault. So it makes the girls much more dangerous to be assaulted. Because they're going to get to roll additionally in the Overwatch anytime they roll a 1, so you only hit on a 6, and that doubles your chances probably of actually hitting, and then it makes them more dangerous in the actual assault because they reroll 1s there. So it's kind of like preferred enemy, but not quite. What other things does it do? Obviously it lets them, if they're going to assault a unit, it lets them roll 1s again when they're assaulting. So what other sort of basic gear do they have? And they have a special rule for Shield of Faith, like everything in the Sisters Army, so they have a 6+ invulnerable save. It can really save them because there are plenty of AP3 weapons. They can take transports. They could take a Rhino or an Immolator. they don't have to be in it at the start of the game, so you could actually take a Rhino or an Immolator for one of these squads and just use it as a transport for another unit, like a Repentia, or you could use the, Immolator is just a pretty effective tank with heavy flamers or multi-meltas, or even the heavy bolter with Inferno rounds. So it's a good option. They can take transports. Then I mentioned earlier you can add up to 10 more girls. I'm not sure I would do that because it doesn't improve their morale on a 20-girl squad. Might not be as useful as 2 10-girl squads, considering most games are going to be for objectives. There's only one for kill points. So out of your 10-girl squad, one of them can replace their bolter with a storm bolter. Probably not worth it. It's 3 points. It makes it an assault weapon, but the rest of the squad is shooting rapid fire, so it's not worth it. They could get a heavy bolter or flamer for 5 points. Oh, yeah, this is pretty useful. I don't know about the flamer, because these girls probably aren't going to be that close, but the heavy bolter, it's great in 6th edition. And as long as the girl with the heavy bolter doesn't move, she doesn't have to snap fire. Even if she does, she can hit on a 6 and reroll 1 if her active faith went off. You could get a multi-melta or a melta gun. It's actually my personal preference usually is to spend 10 points for the multi-melta. It's got a 24-inch range, and it can pretty much pen or kill instantly many things on the board. And even if it moves, you have a chance to hit with a snapfire. You could get a heavy flamer for 20 points, and I'm not really sure it's good for the Battle Sisters, because my personal opinion on Sisters of Battle is you usually don't want them to be in an assault, and heavy flamer means you're within assault range. So, you gotta think about that. They can take another upgrade, so one other Battle Sister can replace her bolt gun with a Storm Bolter again, flamer, or a Melta-Gun for 10 points. And my personal preference usually for a Sisters of Battle, so Battle Sister squad, is to take the Multi-Melta and the Melta-Gun, or the Heavy Bolter and the Melta-Gun. That makes them pretty dangerous to monsters, creatures, or walkers, or vehicles that come within range. And it doesn't mean that they have to get close with those flamers to something. Now, the flamers are useful if you're going to get charged, because they do get the Wall of Death on the Overwatch. So one girl can take the Simulacrum Imperialis. This is actually a Blessed Banner, but it's sort of the same thing. It's a model with a post holding something. It lets them reroll failed acts of faith. I'm not sure it's worth 20 points. It's the most expensive upgrade, short of a heavy flamer, so I would probably skip it. The Sister Superior here, she can replace her bolt gun or pistol with a chainsword, a storm bolter, and still probably not worth it. A power weapon. It says sword in the codex, but FAQ'd to a weapon, and so she could take a power maul, for example, and then she's strength 5, which means she's pretty strong, but she's going to have crack grenades anyway, so I'm not sure I would do it. She could take a combi flamer, combi melta, or plasma. Those are all okay, but I'm not sure it's worth it. She could take the Condemner bolt gun, which I'm fairly convinced is a useless upgrade. Or she could take a plasma pistol, which is kind of useful. It lets you kill things like Terminators that might land next to you. And then she can take Melta Bombs for 5 points, and depending on how you plan to position your sisters, that 5-point Melta Bomb can be pretty useful. And that's it for upgrades. There's one other thing to mention. If you're using Imperial armor, Forge World miniatures, they can take a repressor, or they can get in a repressor. They can't actually take it as their base transport. But a repressor has a wide array of firing ports, so you can put a girl squad in there and shoot most of them out while in a vehicle. So probably should go through the vehicles just a little bit. The Rhino is absolutely a standard Rhino, just like a Space Marine Rhino, except it has Shield of Faith, so it has a 6-up invulnerable save. And the Immolator, which is a little short of twice the cost of the Rhino, is a 6-person max transport with comes with a twin-linked heavy flamer, smoke launchers, and Shield of Faith. So it has that 6-up invul save. You can get the twin-linked heavy bolter with Inferno bolts for free, or you could get the twin-linked multi-melta for 15 points. I usually take this actually for my Dominion squad. I'd take the multi-melta. But any of the options with it are pretty good. Obviously you can take it, but you can't start your girls in an immolator because it only has a transport capacity of 6. And then it has all the standard upgrades, Searchlight, Dozer Blade, Stormbolter, 100 killer missile, and extra armor. Most of those are useful. I don't think the extra armor is, though, not at 15 points. Same for the Rhino, it's not worth 15 points. Okay, so tactics for these girls. Well, they are a mandatory troop choice. You have to take 2 squads of them if you have a sister's army. They're good for holding objectives. I usually stick them behind an Aegis wall or in cover so that if there's AP 3 weapons hitting them, they get a save outside of their 6-up. But they're pretty good. They're actually better at shooting than Space Marines. They have a ballistic skill 4, same as a Space Marine, but because their active faith lets them reroll 1s, they're actually much more likely to hit a target than a Space Marine squad. Downside is you can't break them into tactical squads, so your group of 10 girls is stuck as a group of 10 girls. They put more lethal shots down than the Imperial Guard. So, a Guard veteran squad is shooting las guns, this squad is shooting bolters. So they're pretty good at shooting, and the Sisters is mostly a shooting kind of army, sort of medium range shooting. They're dangerous out to 24 inches with those bolters, but beyond that, not so much. They're pretty good at sort of sitting on objectives. They do have the disadvantage that they're not fearless, but they basically can always make a morale check, because even if you're down to, having to roll double 1s, the active faith, which is on a 5-up or a 4-up if you're making a morale check, because you've at least lost someone, has pretty much a chance of auto-regrouping you. So they're good at holding objectives. I would usually suggest, in most games or objective-based games, you put these girls on a map near your objective so you can identify them. Hopefully one of them is going to be beneficial. There's a high likelihood that one of your objectives will either do something positive in that it gives you a useful ability like Skyfire, or it makes it harder to charge them. It's important to realize that the targeting array, if you can put these girls next to a targeting array, the targeting array lets you reroll 1s. That is a faith point saver, because these girls don't ever have to use their active faith in the shooting phase when they're sitting next to a targeting array. They automatically get it since the targeting array does the same thing. So very strong consideration. And I usually say in most games it's best to identify your objectives, even ones that blow up. It's good to know what they do at the beginning of the game or near it, so that if you want to put a squad, move them over to it. So it's a troop choice. It's actually a fairly versatile troop choice, which is surprising, considering it's the only one you get. But it's it's pretty good. Other things with the write-up for what is a close combat weapon in the 6th edition basic rulebook. All these girls get their basic 1 attack on their stat line, except for the Sister Superior, who gets 2. And then bolt pistols are additional close combat weapons, so they're going to get an additional attack for that. So they're not bad in combat. They put down a fair number of attacks, and before people argue with me about they don't have weapons, it does state that all models, whether they have a weapon in hand or not, are considered to have a basic close combat weapon. It even gives the example of a bolt gun, not a bolt pistol, in a Space Marine being a close combat weapon. So, I'm not sure I would ever take the chain sword or even the power weapon upgrade for these girls, because you want to be able to put the most number of hits down. They are pretty decent in combat. They're not great, so they can last a couple rounds against many opponents because of their 3-up armor save. But after that, they usually sort of melt away unless you're fighting Guard or Eldar or Tau or something that are not as strong as you. But that's where it stands. And so in review, you have no choice. You must take this unit. It's pretty versatile. You can make them multi-melta melt-a-gun units, you can give them the flamers and try to cleanse other units as they approach you, or heavy bolters and give them a 36-inch range where they could hurt your opponents. And if you stick them on an Aegis line with Icarus or quad cannon, or stick them in a bastion, they can shoot all the weapons out of it at ballistic skill 4, rerolling 1s, more than 50% of the time probably. So it's a pretty solid unit. And that's the review.